right, everyone. Welcome to episode 41 of Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? Wow, Amy, time is flying
We're
by,
chugging. We're
right?
chugging. Yeah.
Yeah. For my partner, Amy G, I'm Celeste Gehring. So, just who's behind the decisions regarding which sports anchors, analysts, and reporters will be the ones we see on TV? Well, today we get to meet her. Yes, our guest today has a ton of network experience from ABC to ESPN and to NFL Network. She deals with all of your favorite faces on the NFL Network and is the VP of On-Air Talent at the National Football League. We're so excited to welcome in Sandy Nunez.
Oh,
We're
thank you,
gonna get an
everybody.
applause. We need an applause button.
Right? We
Yeah.
do. We
The
really do.
circle clap. The circle clap is good.
Yeah.
Sarah Spain taught us the circle clap, but yeah.
Yeah. And it's
We're
just,
so excited to have you, Sandy. Thank you for doing
I'm excited to
this.
be here. Thank you for asking.
I can't even imagine how busy you are. So get to it, Celeste.
okay. All right. All right. I'm hurrying up. Okay. I actually interviewed with you years ago. We talked about this yesterday on the phone, and I just knew then you were a phenomenal leader. I missed out on going to ESPN, one of my big regrets, but everything works out for a reason. And
It
you
does.
are such a fantastic leader. Glad to be reunited right now. But can you tell us what your day-to-day like is there at the NFL Network?
Yes, it can.
She's like,
Loaded.
yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of different lanes of operation.
Mm.
One is crisis management, just that's what it comes to the top of my mind. Uh, Amy, you're laughing.
I know. Well,
You
because
know what I'm
I have
talking
been
about.
talent. I
You know what
know.
I'm talking
I'm
about.
so sorry, Sandy,
Yeah, I
for on
appreciate
behalf of all talent.
Yeah.
that. Say thank you. I accept that. Um, so yes, a lot of crisis management. I mean, you just don't know. In production, it's always different day to day anyway. But when you add on, managing people full time, I mean, I was a coordinating producer forever, and you would come in, you manage your shows, you manage your content. You're busy, kind of just looking to see what the latest and greatest is of the day. Very different when you're managing talent full time because these are real life people who have real life issues that you want to, as a leader, not have canned answers for. You want to really make sure to pay attention because there could be a very sort of subtle answer or response from somebody actually could be they could be trying to tell you something else. So,
Mm.
you have to really pay attention. Is this person having an issue I should probably maybe dig into more? Maybe they need relief of certain things. So, or they're just outright not doing what they need to do. So there's that too.
What are you
I know,
talking
I know
about?
you have no idea what I'm talking about, Amy. And so I would say there's that. I'm also the primary point person for contract negotiations. So I will be, but and that is a big thing in the sense of I need to plan. So I'm forecasting and, really kind of going through the budgets very extensively to say, what can I spend? What do I have left for,
Mhm.
our fiscal ends next week or the
Mhm.
31st, so it's
Mhm.
coming up, it's concurrent with CBA. And so, and then I'm forecasting for the next year and trying to see what production might pop up that I haven't forecasted yet for. And then I'm also looking meanwhile, I'm keeping my eye on prospects all the time. I'm talking to agents and prospects all the time.
Mhm.
My inbox is inundated with people. I mean, this morning alone, there's like 5 extra people who want to get on the air. And it can be a combination reporters, analysts,
Right.
hosts. And so kind of trying to keep that on track, which leads me to, sorry, it's such a long answer, but it leads me to succession planning. I'm trying to say, okay, the people we have in place, if so and so isn't going to come back or we're going to go down a reporter or whatever, what do I have in place that is going to be appropriate for, to replace? And it's got to be like a couple people deep because, maybe that
Yep.
number one choice isn't going to really want to come or they get another offer or whatever.
Hmm.
And then, you're trying to keep it in mind. I mean, this is, historically, sports production and broadcasting is mostly male dominated. So you're trying to like even some playing fields here, whether it's through diversity lens or just, overall, like, do we have enough women in here? We need
Mm-hmm.
those voices. So there's a lot to consider there. And then lastly, I also manage all of the support teams that, when we go to temp polls. So all the teams that handle logistics, hair, makeup, and also I have a hair, makeup, wardrobe department here that I manage too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a busy day,
I
Just a
know.
little bit. Just a little bit.
It's a little busy, I manage like if sponsorship has agreements for talent, I got to manage those. Like I'm vetting those out, going through legal with
Mm,
that. So there's a
mm-hmm.
lot of little different things happening.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's like today, kind of a lot of that happened.
Wow.
So,
Throw
so
this podcast in there, and yeah, Sandy's not sleeping today.
well, no,
Sorry.
that's why, when you first were when we were talking earlier, I sort of just blew the whole timeline because I'm like, I just, sometimes, and I don't have, when COVID came, they did, uh, dismiss the admins for the vice presidents. So I don't have anybody helping me with my calendar. I'm the one, so I'm like double booking myself all the time. And
Oops.
it's a
Yeah.
mess. So
I'll
welcome to my world.
Well, I mean, I knew you were busy, but I mean, it's pretty insane what you handle. And I'll never forget, Celeste and I go back to 2001. My first job in sports was at Fox Sports Net
Right.
in LA. And that's where I met her. And our boss was Rick Jaffe. And I will never forget him telling me that his job was 90% therapist, 10%, all the
Right.
other stuff that
Other
he had
stuff.
to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was dealing not only with talent, but just with his staff and like
Well, that's
what
it.
what
Yeah.
we had going on and what was going on personally and all that kind of stuff. And that's a tough role to have for sure. And I will say this is not coming from Sandy, but having been talent for most of my career, I think I think I'm easy talent to work with, right? Of course. But like some of the shit I see these people pull, I'm just like, what? And then they have to go talk to Sandy, right? Like Sandy has to handle this kind of stuff. And gets kind of crazy. But anyway, you're kind of basically like a hero.
Oh,
Thank
I
you
do
for
that.
putting up with all of us. Um,
I
let's
appreciate
go
you saying that.
yeah, let's go back to little Sandy. And where did you grow up? And did a love of sports develop for you that helped you later on in your life when this became where you were going to be? What's your connection with sports?
How did it evolve? So I wish I could say that little Sandy was, a great athlete, super coordinated, a stud, doing whatever, but that was not the
You
case.
you
Uh,
can, nobody would know.
Now, little Sandy grew up on the beach in Carlsbad, California, and my family spent most of our time on the beach, or my dad bought a boat. We were water skiing, so we were very,
Mhm. So
water
fun.
oriented,
Hmm.
and not. My dad was an immigrant. He was not really, into NFL. When my sister had kids, and so the boys would watch basketball. So we became NBA fans because we had the grandkids and we watched with them. And then when uh, I would say what happened really was that the whole journey is that I was kind of like I'm a younger sister. My sister's 6 years older,
Oh,
always kind
okay.
of knew what she wanted to do, wanted to be an attorney like since she was little. And I was like, I have no idea. I followed her to UCLA. She went to UCSD undergrad and then UCLA law.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I'm going to follow you. So I followed her to UCLA undergrad. We lived together in Brentwood. I was pretty clueless. I was just so excited to be there. But like clueless as far as like, what do I want to
What
do?
you wanted to do. Yeah.
In fact, I was a political science major because of her. Had no desire to be a lawyer. I just didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is I just didn't focus on anything. I was very social and that was like I loved that part. And as a little sister, you can get away with that kind of stuff. So Finally, one day, she gave me, sat me down and had to come to Jesus and said, "You need to figure
Oh,
your shit out." And you talk a lot, so go to
Nice.
the job board and find a job in news. I was like, what? And I mean, that was the furthest thing from my mind. At the time, I was working at the UCLA placement office, so I literally did hang up the phone with her, went to the job board, and there was a posting for, this was a long time ago, cable news network. It was posted
hmm
that way, and I'm
hmm
like, what is that? But well, the reason I like, there was really no other, applicable posting. I like that because it did say live studio presence, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, oh, there's a studio at least. So, I mean, I did not have CNN at the time
hmm
on my own TV.
hmm
But I thought, let's go check it out. Well, in those days, you could call them and they would say, come on in. So I went and
Right.
talked to them the next day and they said, you're hired. And I went, terrific, for free, for free, I might add.
Oh yeah, of
Um,
course.
You
Yeah.
know, but I worked 5 days a week for free. And I walked in and I said, oh, yeah, this is, nobody in my family had ever worked in television or entertainment. So I walked in and just the feeling they were at the time they had a live show. Nobody would even know what that show is now, but it was a live show, and I was like, this is super exciting.
It is. Yeah.
So I was like, whatever this is, that's what I want to do.
hmm
And so I remember, so I was at UCLA and all the other interns were from USC. So, there was a bit of a rivalry there. And I was annoyed. They were annoyed by me. I was annoyed by them. And one day, though, I walked in and they were all gone because they all went back to school. And I was like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to hang out here for a while. And I did. So that's why I worked every day. And it eventually got me my first 20-hour job.
There it is. We always love to know the first job.
Yeah, it was
That's
the
a
first
great first
one.
job.
And then
Yeah.
it led to my first full-time job in television on the news desk for
Yeah.
$13,000.
I know.
Yeah,
I feel like you're almost like my kindred spirit because same, like no one in my family knew anything about television. My dad
right.
studied economics and my brother
Uh,
studied history and my mom was a social major. They didn't even
yep.
like people in television, right? And
Right,
and I was
right,
like, oh, I kind of
right.
think it's kind of cool. But the first time I walked into a studio, there was something that happened, and
Mhm.
I was so excited that this product was being put out there for people. It was live. You could make mistakes. Like there was risk involved, and
Yep.
it was glamorous, but also educational. And like I had this whole thing, and I knew very early on in my college days I wanted to work in television. Not didn't know what, but I had the
Right.
exact same reaction. And I think that's important to share with those listening, especially the young ones. Like look for look for something that makes you feel that way,
Totally,
because
totally.
that's this it's a visceral reaction
Well,
and
you're
it's
you're like, I really want to be in that setting.
Mhm.
You don't run into things often where you're like, I really want
I
to be in
want to be
that
here.
setting. I want more. What is this
Yeah.
about? It makes you
Yeah.
curious.
It's like when you're looking for your first house and you look and you look and you look and you look, but when you walk into the one, you're
Hmm.
like, this
You
is it.
know. Hmm.
Yeah. You don't exactly get that with your partner, although I'll say I knew about Paul totally,
There you go.
totally, right? But it's that vibe, like the right person, the right place, the right
Right.
vibe. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Celeste, you take it from here because she answered a lot of our questions in that one, which I love. She's moving along. She's moving along.
Right. Well, so you said you landed your first job at the news desk.
Hmm.
And then how long were you there? And then what is that transition before you went to ABC as a news producer? Was the news desk on at ABC or was it somewhere else?
So that's another little interesting part. So I worked at CNN, for about like right about 7 years. And I went from the entertainment to so actually I started the internship in entertainment, then got the first time or full-time job in news. And that was really exciting. it was really good to be covering national news. Even though we were on the desk, we
Hmm.
bring Larry King used to come through there a lot. So we would
Yep.
bring his controversial guests through there. So it was super
Yeah.
exciting that way. Um,
So were you back in DC for this?
no, I was
Or
in
he was
I
LA.
was in
He's
LA.
LA. Yeah.
He,
Okay.
he was based in DC, but he used to
He
come through a
come to
lot. He
LA.
loved
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so that was a really great first look at like covering national news and how exciting that could be. I mean, we had like we even had a guy who was, I mean, in retrospect, kind of tricky, but he was kind of an alleged terrorist that we brought in the back door, and the FBI heard that we had him in there on the show, and the next thing you know, they were coming in. It was like a total
Oh,
scandal, but I mean,
wow.
like, how exciting is that?
Exciting. Yeah. Yeah.
So not your average day at work, right? So
Totally.
it was nuts.
No.
So I worked on that, but I did realize really quickly that and I went from news desk to producer. So,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
the journey was really productive there. We were non-union. You could do anything. You could go into the edit machine and edit a piece yourself. I mean, it was just
Yep.
very straight too. So, but I did realize I'm like, how come when we go out to an event, there's like two of us, and then when NBC or ABC goes out to an event, there's like 50 of them, and we're covering the same thing. So I quickly realized, like, if I really want to go to where there are more resources and
Hmm.
more,
Hmm.
opportunities to pursue things. So we were just always really bare bones at CNN.
Hmm.
So I was trying to figure out how to do that. And when you don't know anybody, and at that time, the climate was very much, very male, network news is very male dominated at the time, with not just males, but like older males. Your average age of your network producer was like 50 to 60.
Hmm.
And a lot of those people were legacy people or people who knew executives. Like that's how you got in. It was almost like a club. So I
Hmm.
was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through that. I don't know anybody. So one of the things I decided to do, you grow up with your network. Like, so for example, I was always an ABC person, always.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So that's where I went. I'm like, I'm going to
Hmm.
go to what I know.
ESPN. Hmm.
And so I'm going to go to what I know. And I thought I'm going to go to the local and try to go in the back door that way. So I moved over to local news, and that almost killed me because that is a rough gig.
That is a grind.
That is a
Yes.
rough gig. I was a
Hmm.
writer, and I'm like, this is nuts. But
Hmm.
there was a reason for it. I was there for 2 years, and I did grind pretty hard.
Hmm.
And I befriended, the network was on the same lot, so I befriended people from that end, and actually befriended the admin of a bureau chief, the bureau chief at the time, and I'm like, I see there's an opening, can you slide my resume in?
Hmm.
She called me,
Smart.
she's like, girl, he's at lunch. I cleared his desk and I put your resume right on top. And I was
What a
like,
good
Oh,
friend.
nice.
That's a good
um,
one.
and a lesson, you got to be nice to everybody
Yep.
because, I think a lot of people were, maybe because she was his admin, weren't as nice. I
Right.
liked her either way. So we were going to be friends either way, but it came in handy when I needed to float
So
my resume.
true. So true.
And she even put in a good word for me and this and that. Bottom line is, I did get that job. And so that's how I got into the network. And that was as a producer. So
Hmm.
I was not really on the desk anymore. I was really
Hmm.
out field producing for Good Morning America, World News, and Nightline. And
Oh my gosh.
that was another whole, that was interesting too, because do you want me to stop talking?
No,
Let's get
I'm
go on.
Fascinated.
fascinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jinx.
So that was an interesting time because um, I could tell immediately when I got in there, like, oh, this is a very tough environment. I can tell it's really competitive, and you're gonna have to just watch yourself here. This is internal talk. And the way it kind of works there in most networks is you have to, your value is really based on like what you're able to get on the air. So you're pitching and pitching and pitching. And when you're pitching at that time it was Peter Jennings and his senior
Oh.
producers. So you're pitching to the rim is what it was called. And
Hmm.
you pitch and you put them all on there and put your bureau chief on there and you write something that you hope is compelling. And they didn't answer me for a year. And I mean,
Oh,
that's why I CC'd my boss. I'm like, you do
yeah.
see that I am pitching, right?
I'm here. I exist. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so what would happen was is you didn't have like the ideal situation is you would have two or three stories approved and you could just go back to back so that you always had something in the queue. And so
Hmm.
point is that way you were kind of controlling your destiny. You wouldn't be sent out to a hurricane or whatever because you were booked, you know. If
Hmm.
you were not booked, you got sent to God knows where or had awful
Wow.
stories. And, you're always trying to avoid that trap. But I could not
Yeah.
avoid that trap for a year. But the interesting part is that I had um, an ally in this, and it was Lisa Salters. And
Oh, yeah, of course.
Lisa happened to be a correspondent at the time for them.
Yep.
She had been there already. And she was kind of dealing with a lot of the same thing I was in that they were the Rim was really about, they had a lot of relationships with the male producers and the male correspondents. And those male correspondents sometimes were also legacies too. So she was sort of having to compete against that. And she was dealing with a lot of the same things I was, but from the correspondent end. And she and I just kind of looked at each other and were like, okay, let's. So she and I got a lot of those stories that, maybe like nobody else would really.
Nobody wanted.
But we bonded and we had a good time. I mean, she and I
Yeah.
ended up becoming really good friends. We are still very good friends. We call each other dude. We never call each other by each other's name. And
So fun.
so the reason that's all important, besides the obvious, is that Lisa ended up leaving to go to ESPN, and I stayed for several more years. And then at some point, I could see that AB Peter had passed away, and we knew when
Yep.
he passed, that was going to change the way the value of the stories and how they handled journalism.
Hmm.
So about a year or so after he passed, I could tell it was coming. I'm like, I think they're gonna change things. They're gonna lay us off. I can just feel this is not gonna go well.
Hmm.
So I started looking for another job, and I've always been really about brands. Brands, like I have to really believe in the brand, or
Hmm.
it's not about like my title or my pay as much as it is about the brand.
Hmm.
So, I loved the ABC brand before, but now I'm like, it's changing and I'm
It's
gonna move.
changing.
And you have to recognize that. Like some people get kind of caught up about, that the brand owes them or I'm like, no, it's their company. I get it. You're doing whatever you want to do. I got to move on. So I was analyzing where to go and I looked at ESPN and I thought, well, I'll call Lisa and see what she thinks. So I called her. I
Dude.
said, dude, I'm gonna get another job. What do you think about like tell me about ESPN?
Hmm.
And so she said, literally, she said, dude, you need to come. And I said, what? And she goes, they don't have any girls and they don't have any real news people.
Yeah.
At that time, they were starting to kind of make a little pivot to covering more news. Michael Vick had gone, had started to have his issues, and like Roger
Mm.
Clemens came in behind him. And
Oh, yeah.
he like, a lot of trial cases. And so they only had sports geeks working there. And so they did not
Hmm.
know how to do that. So when my
Hmm.
resume hit the desk of a senior, he called me while I was on vacation. And he said, can we talk to you? And I was like, wow, that was fast, dude. So I very naively was thinking at the time, Lisa was not what she is now. I mean, she's always been the greatest in my mind, but she was a bureau reporter at the time, living
Hmm.
out of San Francisco. Their model was very much what our model was like. That is, you could kind of, as a correspondent, you can live in certain places, but and then just travel to where you got to travel. So I was thinking, I get it, ESPN's in Connecticut, but if I could be a producer for them, that'd be fantastic. Just live in LA, do my thing, travel wherever they need me. That's what her producers did. And they said, well, we're kind of looking at you to be a coordinating producer. And I'm
Mm.
like, where? In Connecticut. I was like,
Crystal.
oh, 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 okay.
It's cold there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, now the reason that was kind of tricky, besides the obvious, is that I've read mention when I worked at ABC, in the latter part of my tenure there, they needed somebody to go open a Seattle bureau. And funny, an executive now who runs a major network, he was a producer with me, and they asked him to go. And he kind of was like back and forth on whether he wanted to go. And finally, he just said no. So they turned around and they asked me to go. And I was like, I don't know that I want to go to Seattle. I was in the middle of a divorce. I had some family issues. I'm like, I don't know, this is a
Mm,
great time.
mm.
But then I thought about it more and I thought, I'm getting a divorce. I mean, like, I need my job. So, and
And
maybe
maybe a
change the,
change of venue. Yeah.
Hmm.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'll go. And it turned out to be a brilliant thing for me because when I went, that was really a travel bureau. And that is where I got all my international experience from. You know,
Mm,
that's when I worked in the Middle
mm,
East and extensively. And so that was really good. But I think the fact, opening and running that bureau for 4 years, I did that. I came back into LA. So I really had only been in LA for a year before this came about. And I'm like,
mhm,
oh God, I got to move again. So it was partially not great because it was Connecticut, but it was also like I just got settled here again.
mm,
So, but I knew ABC was changing. So I'm like, sometimes you just got to go with it. You got to stay
mhm.
open. You got to go with it. And sports is a big deal. So that was really the introduction into sports.
Uh,
And there you go.
I I I love your path because I feel, again, like very connected. I started as a producer as well in local news, and I started on the morning show, of which
Oh,
yeah, I had to be there at 2:30 in the morning, and
oh
and
yes.
my
You know the game.
biggest job was to push the VHS tape in to record the stories coming down from CNN. And if you missed that, you were screwed because it
Oh
was
yeah.
local news. Like
Yeah.
we didn't have a lot to do, right?
Right.
And I kind of took that production background and transitioned into on-camera talent, which never I wanted to do early in my career. And then I was like, I poo-pooed it. I'm like, I don't want to be talent. Like, I want to be a producer. I want people to say what I write, and I'm gonna, design the
Right.
flow of the show and all.
Right.
But when I did end up saying yes, because I needed work to going on camera, my background as a producer was extremely helpful. When you made that transition from your production side to working with talent, which happened at ESPN, how much did your producer hat help you with this new kind of, area you were trying to get into of working with talent?
It was I've said it already several times to my colleagues, like I'm so grateful to have, I have a lot of different kinds of experience, whether, I mean, because I had been a manager at ESPN for 15
Mm-hmm.
years, I,
Mm-hmm.
have all the production experience, but there's the news and the sports,
Travel.
there's
Oh,
studio, there's
yep.
field, there's travel, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different things. And I'm just so grateful to have all that because I have to be honest with you, I don't feel that I would have any credibility with anybody, particularly the talent, if I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
walked in those shoes. I mean, that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the things I said to the group when I first met them is I said, listen, I have been stuck out in the rain for, 3 days myself and on a story that I can't get out of and I can't get released from. And, or I've stood in, 5-degree weather and to get a story done. And I've worked 5 days straight with no
Mm-hmm.
break. And I do understand that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, I understand how when people that are in-house can't make decisions that are either smart or fast enough, like the troops, the ones who pay the price. I get that. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of things I understand. I understand, when talent would, at ESPN, for example, if they didn't like the deals that were made and felt like the leadership had not done well by them, had not
Mm-hmm.
valued them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I try to like I never wanted to have any of my talent walking away with a bad taste.
Sure.
Even if the the deal is not everything that they had hoped or wanted, I try to at least give them context and explain. I'm telling the agent, of course, but the ones who I feel really work hard and are, kind of worthy of this conversation, because some people, try harder than others. And I think the ones who work really hard, they deserve every explanation about maybe they're going to
Mm-hmm.
get a pay cut. Maybe, I don't have
Mm-hmm.
as many days. Maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
shorter term contract, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
try to give them as best explanation and context as I can,
Mm-hmm.
and try to be human about it.
I mean, that I will just say this from the talent side or point of view, because we're going in a different direction. That's my favorite one. To have somebody that you work with be human,
hmm
that's the best thing you can be in your role, because so often you feel like the people who you're negotiating with are robots, and they really don't care that, you have children and a mortgage and
Right.
college, and I mean, and they drop it
Medical
on
benefits.
you like,
Absolutely.
bye, we're going in a different direction. And you're
Right.
just like, I just gave you 17 years. This is a therapy moment for me. But that's what you deal with,
No, that's
it's crazy.
legitimate.
Yeah.
Completely
Yeah.
everything you said is legitimate. And
Yeah. I love that
it
you're
doesn't
human
it
about it.
doesn't always go perfectly. Like other
No.
people sometimes get involved.
Hmm.
It can be very complex, but I try to give people as much warning as we can. If it's not going to go their way, I try to explain why. Now, there's always these things where, as a leader, you are limited as to what you can say.
Sure.
Or there's also, I noticed that, a lot of leaders don't like to have difficult conversations.
Right.
And I just
So
have
true.
tried really hard to be super real with people who are, like as they're cruising through their contract, if there's an issue, I try to tell them because, when you get to the end and you say, if I'm saying that person is way too much trouble to have on our, like the return is not working out for
Right.
me here. It's really unfair though to do exactly what you said, and that
To
is,
just drop it on them.
yeah, just say we're
Yeah.
going in a direction because blah 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 blah
Right.
blah.
Right.
Like
Right.
that's just not cool.
Right. Give them
So,
a little heads up. Like, this is where you're going because you're doing these things or whatever. Yeah.
or
And
even just like even in the moment, just hey, this came to my attention. Are you even aware that people are
mm-hmm.
taking this? And
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting though because sometimes I do get the feeling that people think I'm kind of the school principal, but I'm like, it's because I'm the only one who tells you anything,
Right. Yeah, you have a tough role. You're in a
Very
tough
tough role.
spot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I can't, it's tricky. You can't, I honestly feel like I love most of the people on our roster. I really feel they're great people. But you can't be like best friends with anybody because it's
Hmm.
a
You might
business
have to let them
relationship.
go. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when I worked at Fox Sports, I worked with a lot of talent and stuff like that. And, it was really male dominated in the beginning. And they would always like a strong woman that was a talent was called a diva, right? So I coined the term Devo. I was like, well, you got Devos too, right? Like there's divas and there's Devos. There's all levels of
I
talent.
love
There are
it.
people that
Yeah.
are so good at what they do. All the talent that goes to all these games are spending, 18-hour days, 20-hour days researching, reporting, walking those fields. Like it is a hard job. So just from like your perspective, what is the hardest part for you working with on-air folks, just like across the spectrum, and what is the
The
most
best. Yeah.
rewarding thing
The best
too?
part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most challenging, most rewarding.
I think the most challenging part is um, making sure to touch each town as like touch base with each town as much as possible. Like I have so many, I've explained the volume of work, which makes it really hard to have a lot of conversations. I'm the kind that likes to talk to people, have a conversation and
Mm-hmm.
just see what's up, like, how you doing,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I often feel like I'm kind of anchored down into my office and my desk because I got so much stuff, that's just bubbling that's
Mm,
timely that I have to take care of. I think that's the biggest problem I have. And I think that the talent, as a result, probably, I'm sure they wish I would talk to them more.
mm,
I'm sure that they just wish I could check in more. Now, I will also say that I have heard that we do have a talent coach here, and he did tell me that he said, I'm always impressed because they do tell me that I just talked to Sandy, that you check in. I said, well, thank God,
mm-hmm,
because I don't feel like
mm-hmm,
I check in often enough,
mm,
or, maybe sometimes more with some people because they're based here versus some of the remote people. I think it's hard to give everybody the attention and information that they need in an equitable way.
mm-hmm,
Some might get it more because they're walking by my office. Oh, hey, so and so, what are you up to? So that's a challenge.
mm-hmm,
Um, the part I like the most is two things, when I find really promising talent and when I see just even whoever's on the roster, like take it to the next level because we're like,
mm-hmm,
you can do this, you can do
mm-hmm,
this,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, I think that those are probably the two highlights. I have found
That's
some
cool.
really cool people in the last couple of years that I feel like our network is better because we
Mm-hmm,
have these people.
mm-hmm.
And it was really important to me, just a quick note. It was very important to me when I first got, I mean, this is where, my history, my background really, I feel has been helpful. I came in the network, I watched the network, and I'm like, yeah, we got work here because I could tell that some of the talent, I'm like, I am just not feeling like they are into
Mm,
this. I could
mm.
tell who was sort of just like really giving minimal effort. And so, you know, I'll be transparent. Those were people that I kind of put on my list as maybe we got to look at this. What are
Mhm,
we going
mhm,
to do here? Because
mhm,
it was really important to me to have people who really wanted to be here, like
mhm,
understood the value of having this job and like really maximized on it. It's a
mhm.
very big brand and it's not always perfect, but it's a big brand and you should be happy to be here. Just as
Well,
I am.
and that's coming from, what you already said about how much you believed in the brand. And
Right.
if you're not believing in the brand, you can't be genuine. And
Right.
that's Celeste and I, that's the probably genuine and authentic are the two words we use the most in advising our students or, when we get asked about how we got our jobs or whatever. It's like if you want to move up, just be real and act, really care about what you do, and
Right.
it really does show through. And so let's you did go from ESPN to NFL Network, which is where you are now. What was the impetus to make that change?
Well, ESPN, um, they had this LA office, which I brought
Took you back home.
Sports Center out from Connecticut into LA. So we started that. And that kind of kept me really happy for a few years. Like,
Gotcha.
it's kind of a startup in that office. So I ended up running, overseeing all the production that eventually came in one way or another, as well as still stayed on Sports Center for
Hmm.
13 years. So 2 years of Bristol, 13 in LA. And
Wow.
within those 13 years, satellite offices are always tricky because the headquarters doesn't, they're just not always sold. They think you're off sitting by the pool and having
Yeah,
margaritas all the
yeah,
time. And I'm like, wow, I wish.
yeah.
But so they were a little reluctant to really expand kind of the infrastructure that we had and the reporting structure and all that. So they just they hemmed and hawed with like what they were going to put in there year to year. And it just became very clear to me they were not going to, um, expand any further.
Hmm.
It would help my career advance. So, and also I had reinvented myself a million times already, literally like probably four different versions of what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
made music videos, sports music. I did all kinds of stuff. But I'm like, all right, I think I don't know what else to do. So I'm like, I've tried to entertain myself and be of value. I just didn't feel I could serve them any further,
Hmm.
in that way. And I did not want to become a disgruntled person, bored by my job.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, we got to find a new adventure. So what is it? And I had also wanted to get more into the business side versus the production side. So it kind of just came super quick story. I knew the guy that had the job, this job that I have now. I knew that he was a former ESPN guy, and he ended up getting another job. And he was flying back, like going to the airport one day. He had that new job. So this was vacant. And he's telling me all about his new job. And all of a sudden I said, "Oh my God, should I be applying for your job?" Well, it turns out
Okay.
had been updating my LinkedIn like for the previous 2 months, which I hadn't done in a million years. And when I was doing that, his job kept popping up in the algorithm. And I kept like batting it away because I'm like, I'm working on my LinkedIn. I'm not
Yeah.
ready yet. I'm working
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I was not ready. And so I'm having this conversation. It still wasn't really final, the LinkedIn page. And I was like, oh my God, it's popping up. I guess I should pay attention to this. So then, yeah, I barely made it in.
Signs,
Wow.
signs, they're everywhere.
Yeah,
Signs.
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Well, as we
It's
all know, television's a grind. So, and you were talking about your relationship with the man that had that job before you did, but who were some of your other mentors along the way that helped you, and how did they help you?
I think probably my biggest help was the general manager of the Los Angeles ESPN office, Judy Cordray. She had been, it's really funny. She had been working at ABC News with me for a long time, like 10 years, and she was a senior manager there. And I remember walking in her office when I got the ESPN job, and I said, I got this job. I'm leaving for ESPN. And she's like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. She goes, can you take me with you? And like, haha, great, fine. Fast forward, I think about 2 years, and they're finally going to open the LA office. And um, this lady comes in. I was doing Sports Center one night, and somebody brought this lady executive to my show pod and said she's applying for the general manager job. She wants to see what the center show is like. Can she observe you? I said, sure. She sat down, and I'm like, this woman, she's no way. Because I'm thinking I'm going to LA, so this lady could be my boss. And I was like, she does not know what the heck she's talking about. So I was like, we cannot have her as a boss. So I went to the show, and I was walking back after the show, and I'm like, who do I know? Who do I know? I'm like, oh my God, Judy, I gotta call Judy. So I called Judy the next day. I said, girl, you need to apply for this job. She's like, what? And she was very comfortable with an ABC network job. She had moved on
Hmm.
from news. She's a vice
Hmm.
president by then. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You need to open this office. And I'm like, telling her, I'm like, you'll be queen of the hill. You need to do this. So she rallied and got me a resume, because I'm like, I'll pass on your resume. So she got me the resume. 2 days later, I sent it to the senior executives, and she was hired a week later.
Wow.
And I really wanted her to be there because I was
Hmm.
like, I need an ally. I need somebody I can
Hmm.
trust.
Hmm.
I just need somebody. I just, ESPN was so competitive that I just needed somebody I knew I could really work with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had no control over whether she got that job or not, but it was
Well, she
fantastic. Good
certainly
job.
had your endorsement, which I've heard this now several times in this interview, and it's so impressive to me because it's something we feel we need so much more of, and that's speaking up for the women while you're in the room and they're not in the room. Can't will you speak for them? Will you recommend them? Will you uh, you know, take your resume and place it on that desk in front of
Right.
the person who could hire you? Will you be Elisa Salters and mention Sandy to these people? Or are you really out there for yourself and territorial, which is just such a difficult, you know,
Hmm.
area that we work in, and the
Right.
being territorial, just like rises up. And so I'm so impressed at how the people you've surrounded yourself with, as well as you walk the walk, right? You talk the talk, but you're actually walking the walk. And I'm like, I have hope. That makes me
It's
feel really
important.
good.
No, it's
Yeah.
really important. And so going to your question, she was somebody that I was, she was a bit of a mentor, unofficially, but I mean, we were together all the time, and we battled a lot of male leaders who
Mhm.
just would not give us the time of day or help us or were condescending. Like she and I were a united front in managing that and dealing with that. And it was our building and how, she was in charge. I was like, tell me what you need me to do. Yet I had the relationships in Bristol that she didn't. So she was relying on me and production. She used to be a operations person, not a production
Mhm.
person. So
Mhm.
she used to give me a lot of, like runway to do what I needed to do. And she really like I was very credible to her. And so we had an incredibly strong relationship. That was a great personal and business relationship. And I never forgot she was my boss, even though we were friends.
Mhm.
And so I would give her probably because she was a little bit senior to me, like the biggest credit for it's funny in this job there are times I do stuff and I'm like, oh my God, that's what Judy used to do for me. Like I can see I'm repeating her behavior in a good way.
Yeah.
And so I'd give her top billing on that, I think.
So here's something else that you're doing that's good. You are the vice chair on the board of directors and president of the SoCal chapter of NAMIC, which is, for those who don't know, I did have to look it up. I'm not going to lie, the National Association for the Multi-Ethnicity and Communications Organization. What is that organization about?
Thank you for asking.
Mhm.
It's a very impressive that you found that. And by the way, I hate that name. I wish we would change
It's a
it.
tough one.
It's a tough
I'm
one.
not going to lie.
But I will also say that organization was instrumental in helping raise my visibility within
Mm,
ESPN. It
mm,
is it's an organization that advocates for people of color in the entertainment areas.
mhm,
And so they have a lot of partnerships with different companies. ESPN
mhm,
was a big supporter of theirs at the time when I joined. And so they do what a lot of those organizations do. There's a lot of networking, there's conferences, there's educational and leadership
mhm,
stuff. I ended up becoming involved one day when a manager said, we're going to send you to the executive education program. That program actually changed the course of my career
mhm,
because what was really important, it was a little like it was an NBA light, is what they like to say. You would learn a lot of stuff about, economics and just kind of basically how to do more with less. Like they're teaching you how to be, a future manager in that regard.
mhm,
And it
mhm,
was, and at that time, it was mostly vice presidents and senior vice presidents. So these people are very accomplished or they're leading big teams and stuff. So, you're going through all that. But what was really, really the most valuable to me is that at the end, is 4 weeks worth. At the very last week, you would talk about you very specifically and how you presented. And it was done, that particular part was done by a professor from Dartmouth. And the course was at UVA, but they bring in professors from everywhere. And
mhm,
this professor, she's amazing. And I remember she's pointing these things out, and it's about how you present. It's how you present, how you think you present, and how you really present,
right,
big
right.
distinction. And what you need to do to just really be counted and that kind of
Mhm,
stuff. And um, I just remember being so blown away by that because I was really in the weeds with my job. I'm sitting here chugging away, thinking I'm doing everything I need to be doing to do a good job and be
mhm,
considered a good employee and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, there's some things I didn't really think about. So
mhm,
that was really valuable. And I came back from that course and said, I owe a lot to this organization for pointing that out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to change my game and I want to be involved with NAMIC, but I know myself well enough. I will not go to the mixers unless I'm held accountable. So I'm going to run for the Southern California chapter president. So I did that so that I had to go to their
I mean,
meeting.
why
I
not throw it
had to
into
go
your
to them.
busy day? Because you have
Right.
lots of time. Yeah.
I'm like,
Exactly.
if I don't do that, I already know I will blow this off. And that was one of the things she said. You have to do that. The networking piece, the showing up piece, the, just
Mm-hmm.
you have to be your best, salesperson. And she was
Advocate.
like,
Mm-hmm.
you get your board of directors, your personal one. And like, there's just all kinds of things you need to do. And I'm like, I won't change my game unless I do something drastic. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was the chapter president for 4 years. And that was another whole thing. I mean, I interviewed Jimmy Pitaro about, like at Disney, it opened doors to allow me to do things and be viewed in a leadership way that maybe
Mm-hmm.
people wouldn't have looked at me that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of work though too, so I don't know that I do it again. But um did that and then, you know, ended up stepping off and then they came back a couple of years later and they're like, "Will you be the vice chair?" I'm
You
like,
are so good at it, Sandy,
I don't know.
that
I don't
We
know. I
want you
don't know.
again.
yeah.
Yeah, they did it again. So we're a little involved in that. And I have there are a couple other boards that I'm on that I just haven't even had time to put on my LinkedIn. So it's a little bit hectic, but I mean it's important work. That's
It
that's
is.
Yeah.
that's the
You
name of
know,
it.
Where
I was just going to say my husband, Paul, who's a man of color, he's Mexican. He refers to the Sports Journalism Institute, of which he was a member of,
Right.
as one of the most influential organizations, which is for people of color and women. And it changed his life. You know, he's
Right.
from a little town in Barstow. I always tell him, I'm like, they're going to give you the key to the city because you're like the biggest thing to come out of
Right.
there, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
it was this eye-opening experience for him. Um, it maybe even like realizing he was a person of color at that time, right? Like, because it
Well, that's
wasn't
the
really,
thing
that was
is,
a big
yes.
thing. Like
Yes.
knowing that you're a minority, knowing that the odds are stacked against you, and here's how we can, and there's
And
organizations
maximizing on it, frankly,
and to 100%, a
Yeah.
100%. So I think it was a very worthy question to get that out there because organizations like that need the publicity and the recognition for how helpful they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's important. And now, funds are tight
Good.
and, the DEI space is changing and all that. So it is important because, and that's kind of what we're talking about is just how do we keep things going despite all the, I mean, all those obstacles. Listen, this
Sure.
organization's been around 40 years. It's not the first time they'll have had challenges, so
Right.
you just got to figure out, you need a strategy. And, the chairman that I'm on with, actually, the chairman is um, he was my, classmate when we were at that education. He sat
Yep.
right next to me, so we stayed best friends. And
Yep.
he's like, "Will you be the vice chair?" I'm like, "Oh my God, really?"
It's like it's
So,
lifelong
yes,
partnerships you make from
yes,
organizations like that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm.
Another classmate is now the head of the Urban League in the Greater Bay Area, San Francisco,
Yeah.
and he's asked me to be in his board. So yes, all these connections are, they're lifelong and they're very important.
Yeah.
So, yeah, such important work. Where have we come with fair representation of women and people of
Mm.
color and basically behind the camera and in front of the camera, really? And where do we need to go?
Well, I am the only Latina executive in the media group right now. And
Wow.
there are only two
Wow.
Hispanic executives, to my knowledge. I'm talking about vice president above, between the league and the media group. So that's myself here and an SVP in the league office. And until you really have those people you hear it over and over. It's, place at the table. But you need to have people at that level because companies are very good. Corporations are really, they got it down in the sense that they are fine on the entry level,
Mm-hmm.
ranks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Production assistants, associate producer, whatever. But when you start getting into those upper levels, both for women and people of color, it starts narrowing, and that just can't change unless you have representation in there.
Right.
And I mean, one of the things I've talked to Paul about is,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have as many Hispanics as I would like
Mm-hmm.
on
Mm-hmm.
this network, and we
Mm-hmm.
have a huge growing fan base. So that's tied to business, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you have to think about these things. Do we have enough females on our roster? Do we have, so, and I can't always do the things I want to do because there are other variables that I can't control, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
budget or whatever. But, you know, the, f- I don't know that my predecessors necessarily thought like as broadly as that. And I don't know that the times warranted that either. When we had a lot of this roster when I first got here, had a lot of white males. I'm sure that had been the case for quite some time because the person making the decision was another white male.
Yes.
And, my boss when I first got here, white male, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you just want a little balance.
Yeah.
So until you get people really into, and I'm very happy to say, I will say I work for a general manager. He is a white male, but he has done an amazing job on his vice president ranks. That there might even be more women than there are men. And there are several women of color in there. And and
There are white males that get it. Like,
Mhm. Yes.
yes, yes.
yeah. I
They
always,
are,
and just
yeah,
shout out to my dad, like,
nice. Nice.
who, I
Yeah.
mean, from
They
the,
understand the value.
yes.
Yes.
And from the earliest memory I have, he was like coaching baseball with my brother who's 4 years older, and he's all, get in there. It
Nice.
was never an issue. And I always give him props on this one. I'm in a little town in
You
Petaluma, which is
should.
grown and grow. But when we moved to Petaluma, there was the boys club. And my dad was a young dad. My parents had my brother at 17 and 19, and then they had me later. And I think I was like, I don't know, I was little. So he wanted to get involved. He wanted to get involved in the community, coaching and stuff like that. And he was like, I have a daughter. She can't come here. And he got the name changed to the Boys and Girls Club in Petaluma, which
Mhm.
we all know today as the Boys and Girls Club, but forever it was the Boys Club. And he was just like, wait a minute,
That's
we're
a big deal.
talk about not being inclusive.
Yeah.
So I just because Celeste and I always get a little flack about, well, you never have men on your show, and are you anti-male? No, we love men, and there are white men that we love, and they get it. And it sounds like you got a good
Absolutely.
one. And that you also need that to happen. Not only do you need the representation of people of color and women, but you need white men who get it. Like,
That's why I'm pointing it out, like who
yeah.
I work for, because he was not always my boss. He's been my boss for almost 3 years. But,
Hmm.
when I first stepped in, it was a different boss. He thought a little bit differently, a little bit more older school than, my current boss. But that's why I was pointing to that is that, you have to be there, but you got to have somebody letting you in. And
Yeah.
so, and he was very, very intentional.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
he's not somebody who hires somebody by any means
Yeah.
just because quality is really important to him because he
Yep.
knows he's got to have to manage it.
Yep.
But
Right.
brought in even in the when I was hired with another um black female executive and a vice president and another black male vice president. So he
Hmm.
was very intentional. But
Yeah.
I mean, since then he's promoted a lot of women.
Hmm.
And it's been fantastic. I mean, we have great conversations because of who we all are.
Yeah.
He leaves a lot of the
So
decision
true.
making to us, which is another whole thing. It's a very democratic place, at least in the media
Mm.
group part.
Hmm.
And you have to have all those different perspectives for the
Yeah.
conversation to be good.
Yeah. We have taken up so much of your time. We have two more. I hope
Sure.
that's. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, Celeste. We had more, but I know you got to go do your thing. I do think, and I was part of this group, that it feels like anybody that we talk to who's interested in getting into television wants to be on air. Shocker.
Right.
What is your best piece of advice for folks who want to be on that track?
Well, I think it all depends on, I mean, at what point are they asking? Are they in a job already? Is it every
Let's
technical?
say they just want to break into the business. They're young, graduating from college. I want to be on air. That's what Celeste and I get told. I just want to be on air.
Well, I think, yeah, well, some of my current health, they say that too. I'm like,
So, yeah.
well, like, how can I be on the air more? I'm like, well, there's a little more to that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
um, listen, I think when you talked about authenticity, that's a big part of
Mhm.
it. So, do they even know what they want to be on the air talking about?
Right.
Let's say it's sports. Let's say they are big into football. We'll pick that. So, what I would suggest is that they need to start establishing a track record for that, meaning, are you doing the work? What are you doing exactly? Are you uh are you out there talking to teams or
Hmm.
coaches, or like,
Hmm.
why would I find you credible exactly?
Hmm.
So you got to ask yourself all those
Hmm.
questions. How can I establish a reputation for myself? As and a lot of that is through writing, a lot of that is through people do a lot of their YouTube channels and all that kind of stuff. Like, you can't wait around like you used to for sort of the classic openings. You kind of have to start doing the work now.
Yeah.
We have there's a young lady that um we she came onto our roster last year, and she did exactly that. She's fairly young, but she has been writing. She's been out there talking to everybody. She goes to the combine. She goes to the tent poles. I was really surprised when a very veteran coach that I've talked to said, "I that woman is he didn't call her woman. He said that person, her name
Yeah.
is I really like her. She's very
Hmm.
credible." And I was
Yeah.
really sort of stunned by the fact that a veteran coach would think that of a younger writer. I'm like, I
So she
don't,
was impressive.
she's impressive,
Hmm.
but that's her authenticity coming
Hmm.
out.
It's who
She's
she
doing what
is.
she loves. She's throwing herself into it, and she's very passionate. So she's doing the work. That is going to be how you get your gig. Because I need a frame of reference. I need to see what you've done. And by the way, it is not posing on Instagram. Like, that's not it.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
In a
You
swimsuit.
know what I'm
I mean,
talking
I
In a
about.
might,
swimsuit.
I
You know
might
what I'm
bow
talking
down. I'm
about.
gonna
It
just
is
bow
not
down.
sexy poses on Instagram or whatever. And by the way, people think everybody's a content creator today. Okay, well, that's fantastic, but
Well,
um,
and along that vein, I don't know how much you can say about that. But if you have a potential talent that you're looking to hire, do you look at their social media platforms?
absolutely, it's the first place I go. Because
Boom.
I don't, there's a lot of people who will show up with their best face on when you meet them. And I want to know what preceded that. I
Mhm.
want to know what you're really like. What do you really like? So you're going to show me you're going to show me, I don't think you're going to show me what you really like, but you're going to show me what you've been putting out there, that you want people to see, and like in a historical way, so I can go and look back. I mean, I got an email the other day from somebody, and I went and looked at the Instagram, and I'm like, nope. Um, I'm like, that
Like
is not
that.
anything I want.
It like that.
Like
Yeah, it
that.
is. Uh-huh.
You're in or out like that.
Because I mean, let's go back to you're representing a very big brand,
Hmm.
and that is not what I'm looking for. I am looking for, do you know football? And can you speak about football in a credible way?
Hmm.
And by the way, that is a really huge challenge for women, meaning, I was explaining to somebody from the league. I remember when I first got here, he referred a young lady to me, and I talked to her, and I said, I went back and followed with the executive. It was a very big executive. And I said, just so you're aware, she was lovely. And she wasn't, she didn't have a questionable Instagram or anything. She just was young in college and wanted to know more.
Hmm.
And I said to him, I go, we talked about X, Y, and Z. I said, but one of the things I did tell her was, you know, the expectation from the audience generally is that women don't know what they're talking about.
Mhm.
It's when it comes to sports.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So women have to really know their stuff. Like they have to work so much harder than guys because, the assumption is they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. And I said, so if you want to make it on sports television, you better know your stuff.
Yep.
And so I remember the executive who, I mean, they're not, the league folks aren't broadcast people. He was like, wow, okay. Like that just had never entered into their head that that would be a consideration. I said, yeah, women have to be very careful. And I've always told women that work with us, like, you need to watch your reputation. You need to watch your output, like whether it's on our linear or whether it's in your Instagram. And I said,
Mhm.
because you represent a very big brand
Mhm.
and I can't take any risk on that. So
Wow.
that's me being
You
authentic.
you know you got a TV person, Celeste, when she talks in these great sound bites.
I know. I'm like, we have
I'm
to have a
like marking
podcast.
all my teases, and I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Oh man, that's a good one. Oh my, how am I going to choose? She's a
And,
walking sound bite.
and I know you're gonna say in your class, I know, you know what I mean? Like this is what she said, and this is
Oh,
what she said.
I'm gonna take the clip
I
and
know.
put it up.
I
Yeah.
know. Oh, what a fantastic conversation, Sandy. Well, we always end up on life, just life in general. What
Mhm.
is your best piece of advice you give to people and just in life in general to help inspire them or light them up?
Well, um, that's a really good question because I'm thinking go a few different ways. I'll try to be as concise as possible because I
You
think
don't
there's a
have to
few.
be.
Well, I mean, I've thought about it. Like, I've often, I'm with WISE as well. I'm on their
Mhm.
both the national and local advisory boards, and so they ask you to talk to the women and stuff a lot of times, and so I think about it a lot. And one of the things I think of is I really can't emphasize enough how important it is to take care of yourself, because corporations are tough and
Mhm.
their objectives are not your objectives. And you know, you you don't do anybody any good if you are not eating properly, not exercising, not getting any kind of balance in your life, your love
Mhm.
life, do you have pet, whatever
Mhm.
you need to do,
Yeah,
go
your
do
personal
it.
life.
You've
Mhm.
got to get the personal life together. You cannot be all about work. The other thing I would say
Great.
is there's plenty of room for everybody. So nobody needs to be stepping on anybody else or there's plenty.
Mhm.
You actually you shoot yourself in the foot if you're going to be competitive like that.
Mhm.
Um, because and there will be people that still do that to you, but that doesn't mean you have to do it to them.
Mhm.
You want to be, it's a balance. You are cautious with your personal information, meaning like what your dreams and aspirations are. You have to be a little careful with that so that people don't
Yep.
speak for you when you're not there. But I think, at the end of the day, um, you don't want to be somebody who is working in fear of other people
Mm.
taking something that you maybe never even had. That will actually hinder your performance. Your energy is going to that versus how can I be a superstar? You gotta, energy that you spend on somebody else thinking negative things is, I'm just gonna make this up, 10 minutes less of you thinking about how you can make yourself absolutely amazing.
It's a
It's
waste of time.
waste of time, and
Mhm.
you're the one paying the price. So
Yes.
that
You're
I would,
cheating yourself.
you're cheating
Mhm.
yourself.
Mhm.
And then the
That's great
last
advice.
I would say is, um, and it's different generationally, but I'm going to say it has always worked for me, and that is do not chase titles and do not chase money. Now, that does not mean you don't work toward always, ascending at a higher level, but
Mhm.
I see this all the time. People take a job because I got this great title, but what's the company like? What's the culture like? What's the brand? Is the brand even sustainable? What is happening there?
Mm.
Inevitably, when they do that, they're out of their job a year later, if even that.
Mhm.
Um, if you're taking it for the money, same thing. You end up hating it because you didn't vet it out and you didn't say, does this match with my own values and my own sort of dreams of what I
Mhm.
want to become? Can I see myself growing with this brand? And be
Mhm.
real about it, by the way. Don't
Mhm.
be,
Mhm.
making stuff up. But that is always what I have done. And because the thing is that if you take a misstep and you've calculated wrong, you are going to have trouble behind that, meaning getting the next job, and people are going to see that stumble. And it doesn't mean life is always perfect, but you want to just be really strategic and play a longer game and think
Mm-hmm.
beyond just that one
Mm-hmm.
job.
Mm-hmm.
So where could this lead me to? What can it grow
Yeah.
into? What is this brand like? Are they even going to be around? Who knows? So, better to, be a senior, I'm going to make this up, a senior producer in a great company than be a senior vice president of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my
Play
advice.
the long game.
Play
I
the
Mhm.
long.
love that. Okay, I know that we're supposed to wrap it up, but really fast.
That's fine.
Why the Manning jersey behind you? I have to
Okay,
ask.
now you just be asking too many questions.
That's too
No,
personal.
okay, so the reason I ask, okay, so I just have to say, really, before I do that, I have to set the table, and that is,
Okay.
we look over here.
Oh yeah, I couldn't see that one. Oh, you got a
Okay,
Beckham?
I have a Beckham, and
Okay.
Okay.
the Beckham is so what you can't really see is it says to Sandy with love, David. Okay, so and I got a kiss on the cheek for that.
Oh my
So, yeah,
gosh.
Tell
so there's
us.
that. And then next to that, let's see, where am I? Over here in the middle, this one, that's Kelly Slater. And that is an
Yep.
Aloha Sandy from Kelly Slater. I think at that point he had just won his 10th world championship
Oh my
when he gave me
gosh.
that one. So
Wow.
the thing is that I don't
You
have
go for the
a
cute ones.
yeah, I don't have a super great story like that for Peyton Manning.
No
That's why
kiss
we
on the
did that.
cheek.
Nothing?
No, I've met him once in passing, and that was
Oh my God,
what
that's so
happened
funny.
was Judy Cordray invited
Oh
me to
yeah.
go to a sports event. We did, and they were auctioning these things off, and I thought, sure, let me see if I can get in there.
He was
And
pretty good.
I'm like, he'll do, and lo and behold, I won it. So there you
Oh my
go.
Is it
gosh, that's
signed? Our mission is
Yeah,
to get it
no,
signed for you.
yeah,
No,
well,
it is
yeah,
signed.
it was
Okay, great.
it's on the
an
Okay,
auction
eight.
item.
It's
great,
on the
Yeah.
great.
eight. You can
Oh,
get,
Yeah.
I
but it
see it.
doesn't
Oh, I
say
see
it
it
like
now.
to
Yeah.
Sandy or love or David or
Here's just one suggestion, Sandy. Take it or leave it. It's fine. I would move Beckham behind your head
probably
Yeah.
and put
should.
that Manning one because that Beckham story, come on.
Yeah, you're right. I
Yeah,
actually thought about
I
that.
would milk that one for all it's worth.
So David came to
David,
see us at
David. So David.
David
So
came to see
David.
us at Sports Center 3 times. And so he became more and more comfortable as we were working together. Oh, wait,
Mhm.
I have something. Hold on. Um, he came to, so I don't know if you can see this. Can
Oh,
you
I
see?
can see that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You need to blow that up.
I
Poster
know,
size. Come
right?
on.
So he came, and then when he came to give me a kiss, I remember telling my husband, I'm like, "Oh, David's going to come into the studio. You should come by, and I'll introduce you to him." So David comes in, and he's like, "Hey, Sandy," and he goes and gives me a kiss. He did not know my husband's standing right there, so it was very funny. I'm like, "Oh, here's my husband." My husband is just looking at me like, "Really?" I'm like, "I'm never
Hey,
going to wash his
it's
feet
part of the
again."
job. It's part of the job. I'm going to show you one really fast because this
Yep.
is nobody knows that well, not many people know I have this because I don't put it in my shot. Hang on one second. I gotta find
Yep.
it. Okay. This one is really for my grandmother, who was the biggest Dodgers fan on the planet, which did not go well with my job. So he's not
Oh,
quite David Beckham,
that's so
but that's
sweet.
Vince Scully, and that's the only one that I have framed. And Paul
That's nice.
approves because he's also a Dodger fan. But I get it. Like, you meet some really, really
Yeah,
cool, genuine people in the business,
absolutely.
and to have those relationships is really special. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, you're right.
You're amazing. Thank
So
you so
inspiring.
much for
Yes.
their time and all that you do for everyone that you help and everything you said. I'm like, I always feel pretty invigorated after these, Celeste, but I'm like, I'm gonna play the long game. So I'm following
Right?
Sandy. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
Exactly.
it's
you
all
two were pretty amazing yourself.
Mhm.
When I was speaking to Celeste yesterday, she said, "I don't know if you remember, but I interviewed with you." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I have totally remember that interview."
Oh, I
And we
love
were really
that.
bummed that, she decided to stay with Fox, but it's what she needed to do. And but I always wanted to make sure we stayed connected on, social media. So I was thrilled
Hmm.
when she reached out because I've never forgotten her. And meeting
She's
you
a
has
good
been
one.
amazing. I think both of you are a great team and very inspirational, and I really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right.
You
We'll
should
stay
go
in
get
touch.
drinks too, by the
Okay.
way.
Yes, for sure. You're on.
Very
All
good.
right.
Thanks,
Sandy,
ladies.
thank
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Oh, Celeste, great get, girl.
Oh,
Great get.
isn't she awesome?
Well, it's funny because our show is so advice centric for people trying to get into the industry, but it also selfishly serves as a reminder when you work in it, like, oh yeah, that's a good way to see it, or that's a good way to go about it, or I'm going to try that. Like we're not done, and so it's good advice for us too. So she was just a good, solid human being, and
Yeah.
I kind of wish she had been my boss. Oops, did that come out? That came out. All right. Well, thank you very much to Sandy. She was just amazing. So we want to remind everybody that on our podcast, we have giveaways. And for a chance to win some great prizes, all you got to do is follow us on Instagram. The handle is at Girl Gig Podcast, and subscribe on YouTube to our show, Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? And you're automatically entered to win our giveaways, and they're every 2 weeks.
Mhm. And that's right. We'll announce our next winner soon on Instagram. Again, that handle is at Girl Gig Podcast.
Yes, for my partner, Celeste Gehring, I am Amy G. Until next time, go get that gig.